Alright, so let's talk a bit about Sprite Kit. For real this time. Our past couple videos just got set up with the interface and talked a little bit about the provisioning profiles. Now we get to really talk about Sprite Kit. And using the Sprite Kit starting template, we've got inside of our folder here the app delegate, a .storyboard file, a view controller class, our scene class, a spaceship image that's been imported in here, and our folder of other Xcode image assets. And we only need to deal with our scene file, or our scene class I should say, because our app delegate and our view controller, they just kind of get the ball rolling. There's some things we could talk about in here. Notable ones would be things like, do we show the frames per second, and that's this little guy down here, or do we show the node count? And that's just yes or no settings right there. Really the main meat of this is just getting down to our CS MyScene file, and of course that CS, those initials might be different on your end if you chose different class prefixes for everything. But you'll notice that the view controller here does reference that CS MyScene, and if, for example, you wanted to open up your application with a completely different scene, that would be the line to change right there. Not even the line, it's just this one class name right there would be what you want to change. And actually, I stand corrected, you would also want to put in here a different import line. So this is importing in that class, so then this file right here knows that when you write CS MyScene or whatever it is, that it goes, oh, okay, well that's a class, I know what you're talking about. And now let's skip on down here to our actual scene file. And classes are divided up into .h files and .m files. Or it's your header and your implementation. And you can see there's really not too much to our header file right here. There's a little bit more to our implementation file. But all this code right here results in what you're seeing when the simulator runs the app as is. It just produces that hello world message and that blue background. And actually, if you were to click down on this, it would show you a spaceship. I'm clicking multiple times, spinning around like so. And you might be wondering, why divide up your header file and your implementation file? You know, that might get a little bit too heady, no pun intended, considering this is a header file. Might get a little bit too heady early on in this course, but we will use more of our header. We'll talk more about the header file later. Basically, for right now, you can just ignore it and skip on down here to your implementation file, where, as you can see, we've really just got 3 chunks of things that are happening here. This is our init statement, our touch as began statement, which is just checking to see if we have touched the screen, and then this final method down here has nothing going on with it. It's just got a little note in here that says called before each frame is rendered, but this actually is running. Okay, so let's start with our init statement. When I say init, what I mean is initialize. This is initializing our scene, and the code that does that is actually what is surrounding this part that is selected right here. All right, this is the custom code that you could delete, you could modify it, you could put completely different code in here, but what you're always going to want to do is leave this part alone and do your own thing inside of here. And this init with size is basically just setting up the size of the screen to be that of kind of the boundary of the device. We're going to simplify that a little bit, but sometimes in other classes you might just see an init statement, and let me just I'll just copy this out and make the simpler version of it, where you don't have the size parameter. So all you would have is something that looks like this, and you do your own thing inside of here. And in case you're wondering about this ID or returning self or self equals super init, it's I think that's a little bit too heady to explain as well. All you really need to know right now is that this is taking care of initializing the class, and what you want to do is contained inside of here. So let's go back up here and let's add, actually let's subtract. Let's go and take out everything we've got. Okay, and let's move it to our own method. All right, so we're going to create our own, and let's call this setup. I'm going to make this setup scene. It's kind of traditional to start with a lowercase, and then if you put other words inside of there, make them capitalized in your method names. And while that stuff is still in my clipboard, I'm just going to paste in everything that I had before, all right, everything that was inside of here. And now I'm going to call this same method, or this method, right? So I'm going to call self, all right, so the object that we're calling it on is written here first, and that's just ourselves, the class, right? And then we're just going to write set up scene, and it should autofill in there. It should detect that, hey, you got a method name that. Let me just go ahead and help you fill that in. And now if we were to run this again, I'm going to stop what we had before. We shouldn't have any issues because there it is. Because all we did is we just took all that same stuff and we put it into our own method. Okay, so that's how you create your own method. Let's try something a little different. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and pass in one little parameter. Okay, and to do that, I'm going to have to change our method signature here, or basically just this line and what follows after it. I'm going to put in a colon, and I'm going to write float. That just means it's going to be a number that could also be a decimal. It could be a whole number as well. And we'll just put in here red value. All right. Now I'm going to get this warning, or actually I'm going to get an error because it says no visible add interface for my scene declares this. What it's saying is I don't recognize what you're talking about anymore, okay? Because you told me to do this one thing before, but now you're telling me to do that same thing but with a little bit of extra information in there, okay? So what we're going to need to do is follow up our method call with that parameter. And it's asking for, and I can hit escape right here, it's asking for a, let's see. Well, it didn't tell me what I was asking for, but we know it's a number. It's a float. It's a number. Okay. So now if I just put that colon, all right, that's colon here, colon there. I put in that colon afterwards, 1.0. It's going to pass that in to right here. All right. And now this red value is going to be equal to 1.0. So if I use this red value in here anywhere, right, it's going to equal 1.0. Now I can't just type it out there like that, but what I could do is I could put it in right here, okay, where we previously had 0.15. Now we're going to have 1.0. So it's kind of like that telephone game where you whisper something in someone else's ear and they whisper it into someone else's ear. So how this kind of traveled was we created it right here, we gave it a value, and then it went into there, and then it's right here. So let's see if that actually changes the background color at all. Hey, look at that. It actually did. That's good. Good to know. You might be wondering now, why would you do that? Well, this is a good example of doing something quick that uses a parameter, but this isn't really a good example of something that makes much sense to do because it's a little bit easier to just take that 1.0 and put it right there. Okay. Your background color is probably not something that's going to change over time or need to be that flexible that you need to pass in a parameter into this method to essentially change it on the fly a little bit easier. So I'm going to hard code in that value again, and I'm going to take this out. We're just going to kind of take a few steps back, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a better reason, slightly better, to use a method parameter. What we'll do this, we'll leave this in place, we'll leave this here, and then let's do this. Let's pick on this stuff, okay? And before I get there, I guess I should just mention that obviously what you saw happen there when we changed the color was we wrote self.background color equals, and this, let's select it, and well, there we go. A macro that expands to a platform-specific color class, blah, 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 blah. Basically, it's just saying that it's gonna set the background color to being a color with a red value of and this can be 0 to 1, and if you select this, that'll give you something that makes a little bit more sense. It says the values below are interpreted as 0. Okay, so your range here is 0 to 1. All right, and same for the green. So this could be 0 to 1, blue 0 to 1, and then your alpha. This is completely opaque right now, and if we had that at 0, then it would be completely transparent. All right, and then now these lines, the ones that we're going to take out of here in a second, are basically saying that we're going to create a Sprite Kit label node that's going to be named myLabel. Now this is your class name, and then this is your instance name. So whenever I refer to my label after this line, I'm going to just refer to it by its instance name. All right. So this is something that can exist for a little while, maybe throughout the lifespan of the entire app, or maybe I'll just get rid of it in a little bit. But from this point on, that's at least in this method, that's how I'm going to refer to it, as myLabel. So I wouldn't put SKLabelNode.text because that's a reference to the class itself. Okay. And the class itself is just essentially takes control of, it knows how to make a label, right? All right, after this, and this is typically what you'll see with a lot of or most classes, you have your opening bracket, then you repeat back out the class name, and classes are created in different ways. A lot of them say something like, or they kind of follow suit, where this one is label node with font named, whereas if it was a Sprite or something like that, it might say Sprite with name or something, you know. Apple makes a lot of sense with their method names. So it says label node with font named, and then you put in here the ampersand sign, and then within these equal signs the name of the font that you want. And most often, at least I can't think of any exceptions to this, when you're writing a string with Objective-C here, you have that @ symbol in, did I say ampersand? I meant the @ symbol. You have the @ symbol in front of it, and then followed by your quotes. And of course you see that same thing going on here as well. So then Chalk Duster is a font, right? And this line is taking care of just initializing the label itself. But the important thing here is that we're also doing 3 lines of setup, and this is actually just 1 line right there. We're doing 3 lines of setup, and then we are adding the child to the scene. Okay, and it's you could do it either way, but I'm pretty sure the best way of doing it is not like this, but like this. You might not see a difference, but you know, you kind of, this is basically like getting your outfit on prior to going out onto the stage, all right, versus the curtains opening and you putting your clothes on. So anyway, the myLabel.text, all right, the .text is a property, and we're making this equal to obviously what you see here on the screen, hello world. Notice, of course, there's not the @ symbol and the equal signs around it, so it's just hello world. The font size, it's just a number, pretty easy to figure out. And then the dot position. When you're doing positions in Objective-C, and let's just kind of write this out from scratch here, what you'll have is a, well, you'll put CG point make, and then in parentheses you'll have your X and your Y value. All right. So what are you seeing inside of here? Well, these are some kind of pre-declared ways of getting the middle point of the frame along the x-axis, and you can kind of read through this. It says CG rect for rectangle, and our frame is a rectangle, right? So it's give me the middle x point of the of this rectangle right here, and then also give me the middle y point of that rectangle. And all that amounts to is just basically the center point of the screen. And your label center point is right there in the middle as well. Okay, so it puts it kind of dead center. And we'll be working with CG points throughout this entire series, so you'll get to see many different ways of positioning things. And then finally we get our line that says self, add child, myLabel. And of course, if you are familiar with either Cocos 2D or ActionScript 3 or various other programming languages, that line will look very familiar. All of your Sprite Kit nodes or objects, I should say, are or either one's correct, are probably going to be put into the scene some way similar by adding the child in here. Okay, so the child then becomes a part of the scene, and if you were to get rid of the entire scene, if you were to transition the scene out, all those children are going to go bye-bye with it. Okay, so the parent of this child of my label is your scene right here, and your scene gets referred to as self throughout here. All right, so let's ignore our touches began for a little bit, and then let's take this apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write another method, and normally we start off with void like that, right? So that one had void right there, and this one, what I'm going to do though is I'm going to return a SKLabelNode, and I do need to follow this up with that little pointer. This is one of the more confusing things I think about Objective-C, because a lot of times new programmers don't really know where to put this guy. Does it butt up against the instance name when you do something like this, or do you put it against the class name? Guess what? It doesn't matter. Okay, maybe it's a little bit better that it stay with this guy, because when we return something, when we return an SKLabelNode, it's going to have that little pointer right there. So maybe in your mind, if you just keep seeing it right up against there, the class name, that's a little bit better, because more often than not you'll see it right against there. So instead of returning nothing, which would be void, we're going to return a label to the method that gets called. And I know that sounds a little confusing right now, but let's do this. Let's write create label with name. All right, now I could just call it quits at that point, right? And well, I couldn't really, but what I'm getting at here is I want to create a label with a well, maybe I should say name, then let's go with title. Create a label with title. So our method itself is going to put in here that hello world instead of relying on it being hard coded in. So what I'm going to need to do is similar to what I did with that float. I'm going to put in that that colon and then ns string. That's not Sprite Kit. That's just good old Objective-C. And again, this is a class, okay? And I'm putting in that pointer after that. And now I'm going to title this variable that's going to be used inside of here, the title. And I'm getting a warning down here, and that's because, and it's going to say I'm trying to return something that's non-void. There it is. Control reaches end of non-void function. All right, I wouldn't be seeing that right now if I'd had void right here. Okay, so if I put in void, it's going to go cool. You're good to go. Don't worry about it. All right, but now because I have that in here, I need to return out a label. Now I'm going to put in here my label. And I'm going to get another error. This is going to move up a little bit. And it's going to say, what are you talking about? There's no label in here, right? Use of undeclared identifier my label. Did you mean UI label? No, that's not what I meant at all. I'm just doing things out of order here. But get my point that it's saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, let's fix that. Let's take all that. I'm going to put that right down here. All right. And now this is okay. Everything's fine over here, but then this has the red exclamation point. And what's going on? Well, think about it. It's the same thing that we had, same problem. Use of undeclared my label. It's because I don't know what you're talking about. My label. Now, watch this. I'm going to get rid of this. Okay. And what I'm going to do is put in here a method call. All right. I'm going to write it up here first. That's a little clearer. I'm going to write self. Create label with title, and then I'm going to put in here my name is Justin. Okay, now normally we would do something like that, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire line, put it right here. Okay, so it's just snug inside of this bracket and that bracket. And now when we say add child, this part right here is going to return to us my label. Okay, so essentially my label is back where it was before, but this method is doing all that work that we had right up inside of here. And to kind of top it all off, let's go ahead and take the title, because we're not actually using that at this moment, and let's put it right in place of that. Okay. So now, let's kind of compress things here. If we were to stop what we had before, run this again, if my code's right, it says my name is Justin. And I could put in here anything, really. We could put in your score was, and this might make a little bit more sense. Okay, because think about it. Anytime that you have to show someone their score, now you've got this single line of code that you can throw in there, and you could change it to your score was, or you could put in here, congrats, you are the highest scoring player today, something like that, right? Now that line might be a little bit too long for, yeah, it's a bit too long, but essentially we've created our own little factory now for showing a label with these settings in here. Okay, and what you could do is you could now go just kind of tuck this down here at the bottom, forget about it for a while, and now your scene code or your setup scene is, I mean, it looks a little bit more concise and clean and pretty. Okay, but let's just bring that back so you guys do get to see it all in one breath. And let's review what we're talking about. We've learned some pretty big things, and they're not exactly entirely Sprite Kit related. This is just kind of some Objective-C basics here. But we have we set up our method, okay, and your method could be as simple as just writing void create label, but what we did is we put in a parameter, or we passed in a parameter here. So your score was replaces out this part, okay, and when we're doing something like that, we do have to put in the class, just so that you know, the variable has a class type essentially. And then aside from using the title, we are also putting in SKLabelNode here, so that this method, this one right here, the add child, knows that we are going to return to it a label type node. Okay, and again, node you can just kind of use synonymously with object. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, and if not, well, we're going to be doing all this same thing again and again and again and again, because this is kind of just the fundamentals of programming with not only Objective-C but Sprite Kit, and well, yeah, what else can I say? I'm going to move on to another video, and we'll talk a little bit about the touches statement here and the update statement. So who would have thought the Hello World template would be a two-part tutorial here, but hopefully you learned something. All right, I'll be back.